Welcome back to the Malaysia Money Matters show. It's January 16th, 2025, and we've got a lot to cover today, from company expansions to potential gold mines. Ready to dive into some major Malaysian company news.
Oh, let's go.
All right, Affin Bank is making a big move, planning to expand. From 130 branches to 180 by 2028, they're really targeting Penang, Johor, Sabah, and Sarawak.
That's interesting. Especially since CGS International is kind of predicting some financial headwinds for them. They're saying they're going to have a high cost-to-income ratio for the next few years,
Okay.
even exceeding the sector average.
So expanding usually means more customers, more loans, and ultimately more profit. Why is CGS so concerned about this expansion?
Well, they're worried about the initial costs, opening new branches, hiring staff, marketing campaigns, all that adds up. So CGS thinks these short-term costs could outweigh the potential long-term gains, at least for the next few years.
Got it. And is that why they issued a reduced recommendation for the bank's stock?
Exactly.
They believe it's overvalued compared to its projected return on equity, or ROE. So they're saying hold off on investing in Affin for now.
Yeah, basically.
Fascinating. Now let's look at AirAsia and Malaysia Airlines. They seem to have very different outlooks for 2025. AirAsia is optimistic, while Malaysia Airlines being a little more cautious.
Well, it really reflects their different business models.
Yeah.
AirAsia, being the budget carrier, is betting on Southeast Asia's travel rebound continuing. They seem pretty confident about sustained consumer spending and, manageable supply chain issues.
Malaysia Airlines, as a full-service carrier, seems to be facing a little bit more turbulence. They're citing things like late aircraft deliveries and unreliable spare parts as potential issues.
Yeah, those kinds of issues hit full-service airlines much harder.
Yeah.
Because they rely on those complex long-distance routes
Hmm.
that are easily disrupted by those factors.
Makes sense. So it'll be really interesting to see how these two contrasting outlooks play out this year.
Definitely.
Now get ready for this next one. We got a court case, shareholder disputes, and a company being wound up.
Oh, yeah, the VS Industry and NEP Holdings case. It's pretty dramatic. The High Court ruled in favor of VS Industry, saying that NEP Holdings, the company behind Diamond Water Filters and Aristo Coffee, was guilty of oppressing VS Industry as a minority shareholder.
Wow. So VS Industry bought a 20% stake in NEP Holdings back in 2016. And basically, they finally said enough is enough. They took legal action in 2023, claiming that NEP Holdings wasn't holding meetings, wasn't sharing financial statements, or distributing dividends. Is that right?
Exactly. And the court agreed with VS Industry. They found those actions to be oppressive to VS Industry's rights as a shareholder. That's why they ordered the winding up of NEP Holdings, which basically means the company is going to be liquidated and its assets are going to be distributed.
Wow, that's a big win for VS Industry. And a pretty strong message about shareholder rights in Malaysia. Now let's talk about the Employees Provident Fund, or EPF. They're involved in a bid to take Malaysia Airports Holdings, BHD, or MAHB, private.
Yes, that's right. The EPF is part of a consortium making a voluntary offer to buy all the outstanding MAHB shares. They've really emphasized that this is a long-term investment strategy for sustainable growth and returns separate from their usual trading of MAHB shares.
That's interesting. It seems like they're going to great lengths to emphasize this long-term strategy. Why do you think that is?
I think it's likely because of their Chinese wall policy that ensures that the fund managers who are making everyday investment decisions don't know about this confidential information. It's all about transparency and preventing conflicts of interest.
Okay, that makes sense. They want to reassure investors that everything is on the up and up. All right, ready for some more corporate shakeups. Ahmad Zaki Resources has had some big leadership changes.
They have. Datuk Seri Wan Zakaria Wan Muda is moving from Group Managing Director to Executive Vice Chairman, which has been vacant since his brother retired in 2021.
Interesting. So it's a bit of a family affair at the top. And they've also appointed a new CEO and COO, both of whom are sons of current board members. Looks like there's a generational shift underway at AZRB.
It really seems that way. It'll be interesting to see what direction this new leadership team takes.
For sure.
Oh.
Before we move on to the global scene,
Sure.
let's do a quick rundown of some other notable company news. KESM Industries is making major investments in new testing equipment, focusing on electric vehicles, power management, and AI.
Yeah, they're clearly trying to capture some of that high growth in those areas. Even though they admit the current operating environment is challenging, it's a smart move for the future.
Yeah, investing in the future even when times are tough is usually a good idea. And speaking of good times, Pakong Holdings, the jewelry retailer, is expecting strong sales in 2025. They're betting on a positive retail environment and a robust domestic economy.
It seems like consumers are feeling confident and ready to spend. And Pakong is probably pretty happy that the government's holding off on that luxury tax.
For sure. Now let's talk real estate. Exim Group is joining forces with Liu Yingyin Group to develop a RM 230 million service apartment project in Ipoh. That's a big investment in a growing city.
It is. And it's not just domestic companies expanding. KJTS Group is going into Singapore. With their cooling and mobile facility maintenance services, it seems like they're looking for growth beyond Malaysia.
Makes sense. Expanding to new markets is always a good growth strategy. Now, for a bit of royal intrigue, Rexit BHD has appointed a new chairman, a member of the Kelantan royal family.
Yeah, this is after the previous chairman resigned because of some legal issues. Definitely a shakeup at the top.
Speaking of shakeups, SC Estate Builder just got a contract to develop a 4MW solar project in Perlis. That's great news for renewable energy.
And SunView Group is exploring the development of an off-grid solar power plant in the same state. Seems like Perlis is becoming a hub for solar energy.
Maybe. Now let's talk about the digital world. U-Mobile has partnered with CIMB to get financing for its 5G network rollout.
They're making a big push for 5G. And that kind of investment is going to affect a lot of people, businesses and consumers, who need that fast, reliable internet.
Absolutely. Access to 5G is becoming a major factor in how competitive a country is. And finally, Southern Score Builders has won a RM $78 million contract to upgrade a detention pond in Kuala Lumpur. These kinds of infrastructure projects are important for a growing city.
Absolutely.
All right, so we just went through a ton of Malaysian company news. It's clear the companies are making bold moves, adapting to new challenges, and positioning themselves for future growth.
Yeah, definitely a sense of ambition in the air. But how will all of this play out on the world stage? Let's move to the global scene.
Let's do it. U.S.-China trade tensions are still going on. What's the latest there, and how might it affect Malaysia?
Well, RHB Investment Bank has a pretty interesting take. They think that if the trade tensions increase, Asian countries, including Malaysia, could actually benefit.
Wait, how's that work? Wouldn't more trade tensions be bad for everyone?
Well, this is where it gets interesting. RHB thinks that this could cause a chain reaction, leading to a reduction in U.S. interest rates, which would create a better global financial environment. And with companies potentially moving production away from China to avoid tariffs, some of that could move to ASEAN countries.
Oh, so Malaysia could become like a safe haven for these companies. That's interesting.
It is. But, there's always two sides to every story.
Of course. So what are some of the potential downsides? What are some of the risks that Malaysia needs to be aware of?
Well, the think tank SRC is cautioning that, even with the potential benefits of companies moving away from China, higher U.S. tariffs could still hurt Malaysia's exports. It's a delicate balance.
So a mixed bag with potential opportunities and risks. Speaking of mixed bags, let's move on to Malaysia's overall economic outlook for 2025. What's the forecast looking like?
Well, MAVCOM, the Malaysian Aviation Commission, is saying that air passenger traffic is going to go way past pre-pandemic levels, reaching between 105.8 million and 112.9 million passengers this year.
Wow, that's a big jump. But there's a but coming, isn't there?
Yeah. Transport Minister Anthony Loke is saying we need faster infrastructure development. To keep pace with all these passengers, we need to make sure that our airports and transportation systems can handle it.
We can't let those opportunities slip away. What about the bigger picture? How is the overall economy looking?
SERC is forecasting GDP growth at 5% and inflation between 2.5% to 3%. However, they've raised some concerns about the mandatory EPF contribution for foreign workers.
Right, that was a big part of Budget 2025. I'm curious about their concerns. What are the potential downsides there?
Well, they're worried about the impact on business costs. While it's being implemented in phases, they think it could significantly increase costs for companies, which might then get passed on to consumers.
So this move that's supposed to help workers could backfire on businesses and consumers.
Yeah, it's definitely something to keep an eye on.
Absolutely.
And we've got a few more interesting updates.
Okay, let's hear them.
Well, Malaysia is taking on the role of ASEAN chair in 2025, and they've announced plans to tackle waste trafficking on a regional and global level. It's a big issue. It's great to see Malaysia stepping up to lead.
Definitely. And lastly, we have a potential gold rush in Negeri-Sembilan.
Yeah, there are reports of gold being found in Lengdang. The state government is currently investigating. If it's true, it could be a big source of revenue for them.
Imagine the headlines. Negeri-Sembilan strikes gold. All right, so we covered a ton today, from bold company moves and leadership changes to potential economic booms and global challenges.
Yeah, it's a crazy time for Malaysia.
And now, what stood out to you as most exciting or surprising news?
Tough question. I think it's between ASEAN potentially benefiting from the U.S.-China trade tensions And those gold discoveries both could have a huge impact on Malaysia's future.
I'm with you, it's hard to choose. But let's take a step back and think about what all of this means for the Malaysian economy.
Good idea.
So we've got companies making bold moves, a changing global landscape, and some big policy decisions to watch. What are the big takeaways here?
Well, first of all, it's clear that Malaysian companies aren't afraid to take risks, whether it's Affin Bank's big expansion or VS Industry fighting for their rights. There's a lot of energy and ambition out there. And we're seeing companies adapt to a world that's changing really fast, like KESM Industries, putting money into that new tech for electric vehicles and AI.
Yeah, they're really positioning themselves for success there,
Yeah.
especially with the whole world moving towards sustainability and all this smart tech.
For sure. And globally, it's impossible to ignore the U.S.-China trade tensions. RHB's prediction that ASEAN could actually benefit from that is pretty bold. It could mean that Malaysia would be in a great spot if they play it right.
But as SRC said, there are some risks too. Higher U.S. tariffs could hurt Malaysian exports. It's a tough situation.
Yeah, balancing act. And don't forget about those internal policy decisions, like the mandatory EPF contributions for foreign workers could really affect businesses and consumers.
It shows that economic policy is really complicated. What else should we be watching?
Well, the changes at AZRB are interesting. With the sons taking over key roles, it suggests that there's a generational shift happening in businesses in Malaysia.
Yeah, it's definitely something to watch.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe those gold discoveries in the jury Sembelin will work out. And we'll have a whole new economic force to deal with.
Now that would be a game changer. But even without a gold rush, the Malaysian economy is in an interesting period right now, full of opportunities and challenges.
And that's why we're here, to help make sense of it all.
Exactly. We're your guides to Malaysian Money Matters.
Yeah.
Giving you the information you need to make good decisions. So what does all of this news mean for you, the listener? What's the big takeaway from all of this?
Well, with all this talk about gold expansion plans and trade wars, one thing really stands out to me. Adaptation.
Oh, I like that. Tell me more.
Well, think about it. Companies like KESM Industries are investing in new technologies to stay competitive. Airlines are changing their strategies based on what consumers are doing and global trends. Even the government is addressing things like waste trafficking.
You're right. It's all about adapting. And that's important not just for businesses, but for people too.
Exactly. We live in a time of constant change. And those who can adapt quickly and well will be the ones who do well. So how can you apply this to your own life?
Well, don't just listen to the information. Think about how these trends might affect you, your investments, your career choices.
This isn't just about the economy in general. It's about how it affects you specifically. So to wrap up today's episode, here's a question for you. How are you adapting to all these economic changes? What are you doing to make sure you're keeping up and doing well in this environment?
It's something to think about. And until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay ahead.
And don't forget to subscribe to the Malaysia Money Matters podcast for more insights like these. We'll see you next time. Hey there, thanks for tuning in. If you would like a deeper dive into all the investment opportunities from today's news, subscribe to my newsletter at moneymatters.substack.com. I will be sharing a deeper analysis of the key investment opportunities from today's news, including what makes these opportunities stand out and how they fit into the broader market trends. By subscribing to the Malaysia Money Matters newsletter, you will also get exclusive insights on my watch list and portfolio and fundamental reports on Malaysian listed companies.